The logic of the world, the logic of normalcy, economic stability, is to be good to people who can do things for us, who are like us, who we like. The logic of civility is how do we treat people who are not like us, who we differ from, and who we do not like, and who will never be able to repay us. Every single human being, regardless of what they've done or how crazy their views are on something, is deserving of a bare minimum of respect just by virtue of our shared moral status. Full stop.
Do you think money takes up more life space than it should? On this show, we discuss with and share stories from artists, authors, entrepreneurs, and advisors about how they mindfully minimize the time and energy spent thinking about money. Join your host, Jonathan Dio, and learn how to put money in its place and get more out of life.
Hey there, welcome back on this episode of the Mindful Money Podcast. I'm chatting with Lexi Hudson. Lexi's an author, speaker, and founder of Civic Renaissance, a publication and intellectual community dedicated to beauty, goodness, and truth, composed of 50,000 intellectually curious people across the globe. She's advised foreign governments from Canada to the UK, is regularly heard speaking at venues like Stanford and Yale Law School. She earned her master's in public policy at the London School of Economics, as a Rotary Scholar, which is important, and is also the creator of a series for the teaching company called Storytelling and the Human Condition. She was named the 2020 Novak Journalism Fellow and contributes broadly across all media. I wanted to have her on the podcast to discuss her best-selling book, The Soul of Civility, Timeless Principles to Heal Society and Ourselves, published by St. Martin's Press. And she's joining us with Bash. So you may see a hand pop up in the video. You may hear some noise. That's okay. We're doing this. She's got no support at the home right now. So we got 3 kids in the background. We're trying to manage. It's all good. I hope everyone gets a lot of this podcast. Lexi, welcome to the Mindful Money Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. A pleasure to be with you.
First, where do you call home and where are you connecting from?
What I call home is different from where I live currently. I call home Vancouver, Canada. That's where I grew up. It's where my parents still are. It's where my husband and I got married. And my soul feels at rest when I look at where the mountains meet the sea. Like I just get the ocean and the mountains in one viewscape, and it's a miraculously beautiful place. I hope you and your viewers get to visit one day if you have not already. So Vancouver is home, but I live in Indianapolis, Indiana right now, which is absolutely home. You know, I've had 3 children here. It's where my husband, he's from Indiana originally. He's from here. So yeah, I live in the Midwest now. Whereabouts are you, Jonathan?
I'm in Berkeley, California. I've been to Vancouver. I ski in BC as often as I can. I love the snow up north, but I'm from South Dakota, so I'm from the middle of the country. Also beautiful, beautiful area.
I may be in Northern California in May, so I'll let you know if I make it up there. I remember when I visited Berkeley, it was like back to back, like day to day. It was like 2 days in a row. I was at Berkeley and Stanford, and I couldn't believe the juxtaposition. Like Berkeley was this wild, beautiful state of nature, and Stanford was this restrained, pristine, like paradise, like glowing palm trees and glowing like terracotta. Yeah. The juxtaposition was acute, shall we say.
Yeah. And when you hire someone from Stanford versus Cal, it's acute. When you talk to a Cal grad versus Stanford grad, it's acute. It's a very specific culture. Growing up in Canada, in Vancouver, what did you learn about money and entrepreneurship?
Oh, interesting question. I came from a very kind of atypical Canadian family. Like my mom is Canadian, my dad's from New England originally. And my mom, she won't mind me saying this at all. She's the most American Canadian you'll ever meet. Like she's like unbelievably industrious and entrepreneurial. She had us reading these books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And like we had this game we played as a kid called Cash Flow about like, do you know this game? You know the game I'm
Yeah, Cash Flow Quadrant. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like, how do we cultivate passive income? And like, you know, she was always, both my parents are very outside the box thinkers. They're very innovative, very entrepreneurial. Neither of them have had normal jobs ever because they're creative people. Like, and I shouldn't have been surprised when I failed so painfully out of normal jobs, because like that's just not how I was raised, And so my parents both work for themselves. I work for myself. I would say it's more like what my family taught me about money and entrepreneurship rather than what Canada taught me. My parents taught me, to work hard for what we wanted and what we have, to appreciate it, to enjoy it. And they taught us, my parents are not complacent. They're very hardworking people. They taught us to see needs in the world and to seek to fill them. Our creative endeavors, and with my father, he's a filmmaker and a storyteller and a professor now of film and cinematography at a small liberal arts college called Trinity Western University in Vancouver, Canada, or just outside Vancouver, rather, which is the school I went to, where my mom went, where my brothers and all my cousins went. It's a whole family affair at Trinity. And my mom, it's kind of a family business, this thing called social norms and civility and propriety. She's called Judy, the manners lady. And so she came to that vocation kind of organically by seeing a need and filling it. She started out, she was a supermodel in Paris and traveled all over the world modeling. And then when she finally met and married my father, she started just having a little side hustle, teaching etiquette to young girls, like self-confidence, how to walk, how to dress, and how to, do makeup, because that was like what she knew. But also taught social skills, how to introduce yourself, how to carry conversation, how to, just carry yourself with dignity and grace, and to be other oriented in our engagement with others. And then she had parents of these young girls saying, well, can you teach her younger sister, my younger children as well? So it kind of evolved into this curricula for children, which is what she's best known for. Now she's got a children's album that I sing 2 songs on, and she does customer service seminars for companies or school assemblies for children, and anti-bullying curricula for schools that care about that. All schools should care about that. And so my mom, she saw a need, and she met it. And she spent 3 decades of her life dedicated to this, what Dale Carnegie, the self-help author, How to Win Friends and Influence People, he called it the fine art of getting along. And my mom is passionate about this tricky business called life together with others. And so I was raised in this home that cared about this topic. But yeah, so your question was about money. So I kind of got off topic, but it all comes full circle a little bit.
So I'm curious, is that being raised in that household with your mom, does that lead to the book, or how does that lead to the book?
I would say it's both an extension of and a response to her and how I was raised. Like, I remember my mom, again called Judy the manners lady. You can imagine what that was like. She cared about propriety, she cared about manners, although I will give her credit, she cared about them to the extent that they helped us do life together with others. And she's the first to dispense with the rules of propriety and etiquette the moment that they get in the way of life together with others. And I really commend her for that. But I remember growing up, she would ask us to set the table just so, forks here, knives here. Or she would teach us how to shake hands when we met someone new and introduce ourselves, how to cut our food, how to hold our knife. And I remember, wondering why. Why do we do things the way that we do them? And my mother, often just impatient with me to get done what she was asking me to do, would say, this is just the way we do it. Now do it. And that never satisfied me. I remember like this. So this book is kind of the product of a life of thinking about these topics, a life of thinking about what are our social norms and why do we do things the way we do them? Are the way that we do things the best or only way? Often no. Like some parts of the world eat with their hands or with utensils of a different variety, like chopsticks. Other people, other cultures greet not with a handshake and a smile and eye contact, but with a bow and deferring eye contact. That's what is considered respectful. We don't burp at the dinner table. And in other cultures, they do on purpose, a sign of respect and trust and honor to your host. And so I've been thinking about these questions for a long time, and it all gets back to the question of the good life. What is the best way to live? What is the good life with others, and how do we do it, especially now in our deeply divided time? And so, as I mentioned, it's both a response to and an extension of my childhood, being raised with a manners lady.
Did you study philosophy somewhere along the way? I mean, you talk about the good life. You bring up Martin Buber, which I love Martin Buber. All the books. So where does that come in?
Yes, my father, both my parents are insatiably curious, intellectually omnivorous people who just are unendingly interested in the world around them and learning and growing. And my father at night, my father has one of his masters in philosophy, does one of his masters on Plato and Nietzsche. And he would read to us about Plato's theory of the forms at night. And our home was just a unending arena of dialogue and inquiry. And I think that's the greatest gift my parents gave me was curiosity, was just an insatiable desire to know and grow, and just a fundamental wonderment about others in the world around me that I remember for a little bit. Yeah, I did study history and political theory for my undergraduate degree. And yet I remember graduating and starting classes in London and kind of being mad at my very liberal arts degree in the humanities, because I'm like, I don't know anything about the world. I don't know about international financial systems. And I remember being frustrated. Why did my education not prepare me for so many important things in the world? And I realized that is like the virtue of the kind of education my parents gave me and the education I got in college, was that no education, whether you are in finance or accounting or in history or philosophy, like any end of the spectrum, is going to teach you everything you need to know about life. A good education will give you the basics to give you the capacity to keep knowing and keep learning and keep growing. And so I will not say that I'm an expert in markets or, financial tools or anything like that, enough to be sufficiently conversant with you on those items.
So let's get into the book a little bit. What is the problem that civility solves? Like, what is the issue that we're facing?
The problem that civility solves is, again, this tricky thing called life together with others. We live in what feels like a historically divided time, where it's not just national and international. There are things like homegrown terrorism and polarization and hyperpartisanship, things that are destabilizing our democratic institutions. And that is happening not just in America, it's happening around the world. And which is kind of interesting because 2024 was a high watermark for democracy. More people than ever before in history voted, and yet there were these seemingly unprecedented threats to democracy, like what I just shared with you, that the hyperpartisanship that are incapacitating democratically elected leaders from peacefully coexisting across difference, literally doing what they exist to do, which is serve their constituents, serve their country. And that's on one end of the spectrum. That's on the national, international level. On the local and personal level, division is wreaking havoc as well. And this, to me, is the crisis that is not getting enough attention. It's the shocking number of lifelong friendships or of family relationships that have been ended or severed over politics and political disagreement. That is not how it should be. That is the opposite of the good life. That is a symptom of a society and a culture and people who have disordered loves. They are placing politics at the top of the pyramid when it comes to their order of priorities in life, and putting things like family and friendship below. And that's not how it should be. Family and friendship should be the most important thing. And those should be the safest places to bring our deepest held ideas and opinions to the fore and have those conversations. And they're not. Instead, we're just cutting the people off, ending them, walking away from them. But I have been on book tour, often with my 2, now 3 children, 65 cities and 5 countries over the last year and a half. And that comes up time and time again. Every single conversation. What do I do with this crazy person in my life who I love? And that is the toll of our division that I think really matters and that no one's talking about.
So you talk about, in the book, you talk about instrumentalizing others. Do you think that's the cause of this, where we're just all trying to get somewhere, so we're basically using our neighbors to get there?
That is a great question. I'm so glad that you asked about instrumentalizing others. I call my book a humanistic manifesto. I think what we have forgotten as a society is what a gift it is to be human. And we've forgotten that in ourselves and in others. And when we insufficiently appreciate the gift of being human in ourselves or others, it makes it easier to not see them in the fullness and richness of who they are, but to see them purely in terms of means to our own ends. What can we get from them? And I'll share this story, and I cannot remember the source. Please remind me, and I will find. I thought it was The Economist. I'll have to go back in my archives and find it. But it was about this story about a social phenomenon after the financial crisis in 2008. And I'll tell you why I'm telling this story. The logic of the world, the logic of normalcy, economic stability is to be good to people who can do things for us, who are like us, who we like. And again, like who can repay us, do things for us in return if we're kind to them. And that is like the logic of the world. The logic of civility is how do we treat people who are not like us, who we differ from, and who we do not like, and who will never be able to repay us. And I love how this story of a social phenomenon after the financial crisis illustrates that all of a sudden, kingmakers and people at the top of the pyramid, the financial and economic world after the financial crisis, it was toppled, it was turned upside down. The normal hierarchies were no longer at play. And all of a sudden, no one knew anyone else's standing anymore. And so people who would previously not even consider returning anyone's phone call, and were rude and derisive to anyone who asked them for something, all of a sudden everyone was nicer to everyone else. It was just like a widely accounted phenomenon where people in the financial world in New York were just unbelievably obsequious and gracious and kind because you never knew who you might need something from. And you never knew who might end up on top again once things settled after this massive shakeup. And I'm trying to remember where I read about this, but it was such an interesting article about how when we don't feel how need often brings out virtue is a kind of pseudo-virtuous side in us where we're nice because we don't know, we might think we need something. Or inversely, when we don't think we need things from anyone else, we're not nice, we're not gracious, we're not kind. And there is that, go ahead.
We don't need to know the modern article, from last year, 2 years or 5 years ago. This is exactly what Martin Buber talks about in I versus Thou. And that it struck me that you basically brought Martin Buber in. I studied philosophy my whole life, as mindfulness teacher. This is what I do. It's what I believe. I love it. But this whole idea of treating others with honor, just, because they're here, because they are human, because they're for their own sake, not for us, is huge. And I don't think people talk about it. So I love the fact that it's in your book.
It's so true. Yeah, the logic of the world is to look at others in terms of what they can do for us or what we can get from them. And the logic of civility is that every single human being, regardless of what they've done or how crazy their views are on something, is deserving of a bare minimum of respect just by virtue of our shared moral status, full stop. And that we're owed that as well, and that is good for its own sake. And that civility, it does have instrumental goods. It does promote trust and flourishing in a society, and that those are instrumental reasons to be good to others, and not to just be a jerk unnecessarily in ways that sow mistrust in the world and make people want to give up on this joint project of self-governance or of living well together with others. So there are instrumental goods, but even without those instrumental goods, it is first and foremost good for its own sake, full stop.
Yeah. I think we all know this because we see the movie where the, wealthy guy drives up in the fast car and throws the keys to the valet and says something snippy. Yeah. And we all bristle at that. We all go, ugh, that's gross, right? We all feel icky about it. I'm imagining whoever maybe the guy that drives the car doesn't go to the theater. So maybe he doesn't see that. So it doesn't ever have that effect. But we all know this, right? That treating people with value is important.
Or that guy doesn't think he's that guy, right? When he is that guy, there's an excuse for it, like a business deal just went south, or he got in a fight with his wife, or we're always quick to self-justify. And what is it called? The fundamental attribution error, where we always have a reason we know our own reasoning and our own excuses inside and out. We know why we're late, why we're a jerk that day. But when other people are late, when other people are jerks, they're just jerks. They're just bad people.
They're just bad people.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's part of the definition, but expand the definition. When you talk about civility, what all is included in civility? What is civility?
Civility is the art of human flourishing. It is the bare minimum of respect that we are owed and owe to others by virtue of the imago Dei, by virtue of our shared personhood, our dignity, our irreducible worth as human beings. Civility, crucially, is more than just politeness. It's not just manners. It's not just knowing which fork to use. This is a core essential distinction and argument throughout my book, that civility is different from politeness. So politeness, I argue, is it's technique, it's external stuff, it's what we do and what we say. Whereas civility is something deeper and richer. It's internal. It's a disposition of the heart. It's a way of seeing others as our moral equals, worthy of a bare minimum of respect. Again, just by virtue of our shared personhood. And I love how the etymology of these two words highlights this distinction. The etymology of politeness comes from the Latin polire, which means to smooth or to polish. And that's what politeness does. It's external, it's superficial. Papers over, polishes over differences, sweeps it under the rug rather than giving us tools to grapple with difference head on. The etymology of civility is civitas, which is our etymological root for citizen, civilization, city, and civility, as I mentioned. And that is what civility is. It's the duties, the mores, the habits, the conduct, the character befitting a citizen in the city, which, especially with democracy, requires disagreement. It requires debate, which is not polite. Like you hear this conventional wisdom of not talking politics or religion at the dinner table for fear of broaching an area of disagreement, because heaven forbid that would ruin a dinner party, right? But no, you can't live life like that. The goal of life together with others, especially in a democracy, is not to never disagree. Disagreement is inherent, and difference is inherent to the life with others. It's inherent to democracy. It's about how we disagree. How are we going to live with others in a way that doesn't blow up the whole project, full stop, which is this is what's concerning about our current moment. There is very little that is unprecedented, truly, as a student of history. I know that to be the case, but that doesn't mean that there is nothing to be concerned about. And what we should be concerned about is the apocalyptic language that we hear a lot of today, where people are ready to pull the trigger. They want an excuse to go nuclear, They want an excuse it's scorched earth, right? And this ties back to why I view my book as a humanistic manifesto. Why are they so eager to go scorched earth on the other side, the people they disagree with, and to just, reconciliation is not the goal, because they tell these stories that the other side is as a monster. They're evil. They are willfully bad. They're not just misinformed. They are morally corrupt and unsalvageable, and we can't do life with them. And it's easy to justify going nuclear and doing and saying horrible things with people who are evil and bad and existential threats to you.
It's so true. I see this every day. I'm in Berkeley, California. I see this every day in conversations. I think maybe one of the benefits I've had is the person that I disagree the most with is also the person who I love the most. So I haven't been able to just close the door on them. And my father is very specific in his political beliefs. I have almost the opposite political beliefs. So we have to talk it through. And I adore my father. I put him on a pedestal. Like, I love him to death. So I know he's not stupid. I know that he has best intentions. I know his heart.
Yeah.
I wonder if the fact that we're saying goodbye to those friends and is it because we're not comfortable being tested, or is it just it makes life easier? Like, why is it's so easy for us to step away from those people we care about who might challenge these issues?
If it is because we think it's easier, we've told ourselves that story and accepted that, it's a lie. Like, it is a lie that life is easier just cutting off people we love who we differ from, rather than figuring it out with them. Like, or even just structuring a relationship so as to not have to talk about the controversial topic or talk about the difference. Because the human heart, I believe, longs for wholeness. It longs for reconciliation. It longs for relationship. And I think so many people are walking around content with an inferior quality of life because they are hobbled. They are deeply hurt and grieving because they just have these open wounds from these relationships. They've just either they've been cut off and that's painful, or they're the one doing the cutting off because they feel like they have to. They feel some obligation to some higher moral principle of justice and purity. Mm-hmm. They can't be associated with someone who thinks or has voted for that person, and that is. Again, not the good life. I'll come back to that over and over again. That's not how it has to be. That's not how it should be. That's why, as I mentioned, this the toll of our crisis of polarization that no one's talking about is that toll, that personal toll, that we are walking around hobbled and savaged emotionally and psychologically. We're self-imposing these suffering on us. And so why are we doing this, though? That was your question. Why is that I think far too many people have elevated politics to a level of religion, to a level of idolatry. Now, and I think there's a reason for it. There's a very unique reason in our moment in time that we are seeing this. Things like faith, family, and community, these have been documented to be on the decline in recent decades. And the rise of religious nuns, people are not going to church and they have no religion at all, We're bowling alone, civil society is disintegrated and collapsing. All of these different phenomena are conflating, and that people we're meaning-making machines. We want a sense of identity. We want a sense of self and a sense of meaning. And so as these things can no longer be relied on, we're not turning to them anymore. We're turning to politics. We're turning to political figures. We're turning to political policies and issues. And there are three symptoms of this crisis of misplaced meaning that I see. One is the way in which the lizard brain is so readily activated in conversations with people, that people just go from 0 to 60 when the mere mention of their sacred cow issue is broached with insufficient deference, or maybe you agree with them, but you don't have the same zeal. It's not the only thing you want to talk about. People will write you off as a sellout, So lizard brain activated. People go into fight or flight if you disagree with them or, heaven forbid, don't have the same priorities as them. And just like an inordinate response to what goes from a casual conversation becomes existential, becomes a life or death. Like they go into fight or flight. Another symptom of the crisis of misplaced meaning is the ubiquity of politics. There is very little that is unprecedented, but that this is something that is uniquely unprecedented just because our media culture has never been so readily available and a part of everyone's life day in, day out. Moment by moment, we are assaulted, inundated with political content. And it's not just when we go to these forums like Facebook or Twitter or when we tune into news, because I do think we are on those platforms too often. But it's like it's coming to us. It's coming into these previously apolitical zones like sports, like school, like where we live, like where we grocery shop. These previously apolitical areas and venues of life now have a political dimension to them, and that is new, and that is harmful. We are overdoing politics. We're overdoing democracy, and we're undermining it as a result. We're not given a break. That all of this works to make it feel as if politics is the most important thing when it's not. People are accepting this worldview, this understanding that politics is the most important thing, and they're allowing it to displace friendship. And that is the third symptom of this crisis of misplaced meaning that we've already alluded to several times now. The shocking and tragic number of people who have ended relationships, lifelong friendships, cut off family members because of political difference. That to me is a tragic symptom of this crisis of misplaced meaning, where people are elevating politics to the level of a religion, of idolatry, of like a totalizing belief system, almost like a cult, that anyone outside of that is evil, harmful, bad. That is toxic to our souls and to democracy and to our free and flourishing society.
Our friendships or relationships with anybody, it's toxic to everything, for sure. Yeah, could not agree more. And there's nowhere to hide. Like you have to purposefully shut stuff off.
You do create these oases, have our home, have our lives. You have to be intentional about it. If you're not intentional, the default today is you are saturated. You're inundated by it. You're absolutely right.
Yep. That actually gets me to something I ask everybody. I want you to simplify this for us. So what's one thing a listener can do today that would lead to their becoming more civil and hopefully lead to a more civil society?
Ooh, that's a great question. I love this line, curiosity breeds curiosity. I take that insight from, I love this book. It's called How to Live on 24 Hours a Day. And it was written by a gentleman named Arnold Bennett in like the 1920s in England. And it was like, there was a social and cultural shift where people were moving out of industrial jobs and into white collar office jobs. And people had disposable income and free time, like leisure time, in a way that they didn't have before. It's on lifelong learning and autodidactism and how to make the most out of our free time and leisure time. What books to buy, where to read, where to start. And he has this great line. He says, "Nothing in life is humdrum." And I love that because it's like, it's really easy to walk into a situation or even an encounter with a person and say, oh, this is boring. There's nothing that they can teach me. But every person, every circumstance, there is a lesson to be learned. There's an insight to be derived that we can learn from every single encounter we have with another human being. Nothing in life is humdrum. So just having a measure of curiosity and that curiosity breeds curiosity. Like wonder breeds wonder. It's iterative. So if you walk into an encounter with someone and think like, oh, this is boring and like there's nothing to be, I'm stuck at dinner with a COVID denier or, a Trump supporter, heaven forbid, and start asking one question earnestly, an open-ended question, not a gotcha question, not like a loaded, charged question where you have a predetermined answer in mind. Or ask a question, better yet, ask a question on something totally apolitical. And recognize, I think curiosity requires having the humility to recognize that people are infinitely complex and we all come to our views about the world for many different reasons. And if we don't want to be essentialized by one aspect of who we are, whether it's our geography or our political beliefs, our voting record, then we should be very loath to do that to someone else. And what does it look like to engage with others in a way that yearns to see them in the fullness of who they are and not unnecessarily reduce them to these cheapened labels that the world wants us to assign our values to and assign others value to.
Agreed.
Bash concurs.
He says mom is spot on. That's something that a listener can do and activate.
Yep.
What is something that they're probably doing that they should stop doing that would lead to a more civil society?
Ooh, get off social media. Get off the internet entirely.
Totally knew that was coming.
I'm a huge fan of retreats. I do them quarterly. I have a digital fast, 24 to 48 hours. I go into the woods and I leave my phone in the glove compartment and I just walk and I think and I write, I journal and I pray and I sleep a lot. Like we have no idea how exhausted we are, not just physically, but emotionally, psychologically. Being connected digitally, it's a constant sap on our energy. And the soul repairs itself when it's digitally disconnected. And when we're given a chance to be silent and still, like it's easy to feel restless. Like I like to journal and just I'll write until I have nothing else to say, and then I'll sleep, and then I'll walk, and then I'll do it all over again. I come away from these retreats with this indescribable lightness, like just my soul feels levitating. I just feel this beautiful detachment from the things I went into retreat worried about. They just matter less when I've taken my eyes off of them and on to bigger and more beautiful things, like, staring at the stars at night and contemplating infinity and the mysteries of the galaxy. It might sound trite, but it's miraculous. It is unspeakably good. And then the challenge is once you've come back into the world, reintegrated, if you will, after retreat, how do you keep that lightness, that spirit of retreat and that spirit of detachment that is so healthy? And there are rituals I have in place to try and keep that, like getting up early and having silence and stillness and prayer and journaling and solitude before my kids wake up. And it's just like a full frontal assault all day, joy-filled, mind you, but it's still relentless. Like I find the days where I don't have those early mornings of stillness and solitude to be, to start my day on my terms, and I wake up with the kids, it's just frenetic. It's chaos, like to my soul, to my kids, like it's just like not remotely as joy-filled and peaceful. So yeah, doing a retreat, a digital detox, 24 to 48 hours, going to the woods, and then just making it a practice to be on social media less. Yeah, exactly. But I'd say the retreat, if I had to choose between them, like do the retreat. And then, I feel like once you just go cold turkey like that, it makes the desire, the impulse, it breaks, the
habit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Break the habit. Yep. I noticed that if I'm having this has probably happened 4 or 5 times. If I'm having a really bad week, I then I go, for some reason, my phone is now next to my bed. But if I just unplug the phone and put it in my office and I don't have it in the morning when I wake up, my week gets better.
Yeah.
My mood gets better. Everything gets better. Just get off of the constant scrolling, the doom scrolling, or looking. How is my email? Just stop it.
Yeah.
Just stop. And it's so much better.
Yeah.
And then get up every morning with quiet, have a meditation, mindfulness, whatever it is. We're getting real close to an end here. I have one more personal question that I'll ask you to tell people how to find you. What was the last thing you changed your mind about?
Great question. I have recently changed my mind about how important my work is. I used to feel this real tension between being out in the world doing stuff. I felt this like urgency, this like, the world needs my work. And it was really hard to pile up my kids and get on airplanes and like doing all these things. And I always lived in this tension where I'm like, oh, am I doing it? I could always do more work. I like to think like some vocations are fixed. It's like you show up, you put in your time, you go home. You know, you're on the clock, you're off the clock. It's like very black and white. There's fixed and there's gaseous vocations that you could always do more. If you have a budget, the project will fill the budget. Anyway, that is my vocation. There's always more to do. There's always one more email to send, always one more, podcast to go on, always another project I could pick up. And I never feel like I've done enough. So same with parenting. I feel like I'm never enriching my kids enough. It can always be more time. And that's been a really hard place to dwell, and that tension. I think it's a combination of welcoming our third child into the world, as well as having an au pair that was just like a very bad fit for our family. It was like a really bad experience that like, I was like, what am I doing? Like trying to abdicate any moment of time with my kids, any moment at all. Like, Jonathan, I'm sure you thought I was insane when I told you when we first got on this call, like, I'm like, hi, I'm Lexi. I have no childcare. Like, this is my son, and my other two might come out at any minute. And it's like, I don't want to miss a moment of it. Like, this is such a profound privilege to be a parent. And I just, first, miraculously, that tension like resolved. Like, I don't feel this deep ambition and like abiding, desire to be constantly doing more in work. I feel like I'm a little bit unambitious. I have creative projects, but they're not like these, go metrics that I feel like I have to achieve like I have in the past. And I just feel utterly at peace being with my kids more. And even if it's a little messy, like, Bash being on my lap while we're having this conversation, like it would be cleaner to have him hidden in a room with childcare, but like, I know deeply that this is the most important work I'll ever do. Creating good humans is the best thing I'll ever do to make the world a better place. I wrote a book that I hope makes the world a better and more gentle place, but I know that this is the most noble and profound and joy-filled thing I'll ever do is being with my kids.
Being on the other end of that, mine are again 20. I wish I would have made that decision.
Aww.
I wish I felt good about that. So you should feel very proud of that decision. You should feel very good about that choice and that realization. I also suffer from that. I can always do more, work, always. And I am going to take that as a lesson personally. So I want to say thank you for that. That's really, really, really critically important. Finally, how do people find you and Bash? Like, where do we find you? Where do we get the book?
Come visit us in the Midwest. Come porch with us. We didn't even get a chance to talk about porching, but it's a story I tell in chapter 5 of my book. Yeah, you can find me at civic-renaissance.com is my newsletter and publication. It's comprised of 50,000 intellectually curious people from across the world. And then I'm on all the social media, but come to Civic Renaissance. And yeah, thanks again how did you find me? You said, where can people find you? But I'm curious, where did you find me?
The book. I read all kinds of blogs and stuff, and I found the book and I wanted to talk.
How did you find the book? Do you don't remember?
I don't remember where I first saw it, but I probably subscribed to like 40 different blogs and read them every single day. So one of them said, check out this book. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to check out this book. Awesome. And civility is something I believe in. Yeah. Like I love it. I love what you're saying. And I hope people adopt it more because we need it. Thank you for being on the podcast. And we'll give Bash a chance to pull it together.
Thank you for having me. Great to meet you. Maybe see you in Northern California in a few weeks.
Thanks for listening. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at mindful.money. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/mindfulmoney. We'll be sure to read those out on future episodes.